My wife told friends, men are so controlling. After I asked her not to stay out till 3 a.m. So I stopped asking and started doing. 3 weeks ago, my wife came home at 3:47 a.m., stumbling through the front door like she was auditioning for a zombie movie. When I asked her the next morning why she couldn't respect a simple request to be home by a reasonable hour, she looked at me like I just suggested we sacrifice our firstborn to the moon gods. That's when this whole mess started. Let me paint you the picture. We've been married for 4 years, and up until recently, we had what I thought was a pretty solid relationship. She had her friends, I had mine, and we both understood that marriage meant being considerate of each other. But somewhere along the line, girls' nights went from occasional dinner and drinks to weekly marathons that ended when most people are getting ready for work. The first time she rolled in at 2 a.m., I didn't say anything. Hey, everyone deserves to blow off steam, right? The second time, I mentioned it casually over breakfast. Late night last night, I said, not even looking up from my coffee. She just shrugged and said the girls were really going through it and needed her support. Fine, I'm not heartless. But when it became a weekly occurrence and then twice a week, I figured it was time for an adult conversation. I waited until we were both relaxed, sitting on the couch after dinner, and I brought it up gently. Hey, I've been thinking about the late nights lately. I know you're having fun with your friends, but I worry about you driving home so late, and honestly, it's affecting our time together. You would have thought I just declared war on female independence. Her eyes went wide, and she sat up like she was about to deliver a closing argument in court. Are you serious right now? You're trying to control when I come home? That's incredibly controlling behavior. Controlling? That word hit me like a slap. I wasn't asking her to stop seeing her friends. I wasn't demanding she be home by sunset. I was simply suggesting that maybe, just maybe, 3 a.m. was pushing it for a married woman with responsibilities. But apparently, that made me the villain in this story. I'm not trying to control anything, I said, keeping my voice calm. I'm just saying that when you're out until 3 a.m., it affects both of us. I stay up worrying, and then we're both exhausted the next day. Can't we find a middle ground? She stood up, arms crossed, and delivered what I now realize was her opening statement in the case against my character. This is exactly the kind of behavior my friends warned me about. Men think they can just dictate what women do with their time. I'm an adult. I can make my own decisions about when to come home. And there it was. Her friends had been involved in this conversation before I even knew there was a conversation to be had. That's when I understood I wasn't just dealing with my wife's sudden need for extended girls' nights. I was dealing with a committee that had apparently voted me most likely to be a controlling husband. Over the next few days, I started noticing things. The way she'd get texts during dinner and immediately start typing back with an urgency usually reserved for emergency room communications. The way she'd take calls in the other room, speaking in hushed tones. And most telling of all, the way she'd look at me sometimes, like she was studying me for signs of this controlling behavior her friends had apparently diagnosed. I decided to test my theory. The following week, when she announced another girls' night, I simply said, "Sounds fun. What time do you think you'll be home?" Notice I didn't ask her to be home by any particular time. I just asked when she thought she'd be back. Her response was immediate and defensive. "I don't know." "Why? Are you going to wait up and interrogate me when I get home?" "No," I said, genuinely confused. "I was just curious. If you're going to be really late, I might not wait up." She stared at me for a long moment, then grabbed her purse with more force than necessary. "I'll be home when I'm home. Don't wait up." That night, she came home at 4:15 a.m. The next morning, she was defensive before I even spoke. "Before you say anything, we were having deep conversations about important things. Time just got away from us." I hadn't said anything. I hadn't even looked at her sideways. But she was already prepared for battle. That's when I realized what was happening. Somewhere along the line, asking my wife to be considerate of our shared life had been reframed as controlling behavior. And worse, she was sharing our private conversations with her friends, who were apparently coaching her on how to handle her controlling husband. I made a decision that morning. I wasn't going to play defense anymore. If she wanted to paint me as the controlling husband, I was going to show her what that actually looked like. Not by becoming actually controlling, but by demonstrating just how reasonable my original request had been. The next time she announced a girls' night, I was ready. "That's great," I said with a smile. "I'm actually going to head out with the guys, too. Haven't seen them in a while." She paused, clearly not expecting this response. "Oh, okay. What time will you be home?" I looked at her with genuine amusement. I'll be home when I'm home. Don't wait up. You should have seen her face. It was like I'd just spoken to her in ancient Greek. The irony was completely lost on her, but it wasn't lost on me. This was going to be more interesting than I thought. The following Friday, she announced the mother of all girls' nights. Apparently, one of her friends was going through a crisis and needed the full support system. Translation: they were planning to turn our local bar into their personal therapy session until the sun came up. I'm probably going to be really late tonight, she said, applying her makeup with the precision of someone preparing for war. Like really late. Don't wait up. I nodded from the bedroom doorway. No problem. I'm meeting the guys at Dave's place. We're going to play poker and probably make it a late one, too. She stopped mid-lipstick application and turned to face me. You're going out, too? Yeah. Figured since you're having your night, I'd have mine. Fair's fair, right? Something flickered across her face. I couldn't quite read it, but it wasn't the relief I expected. How late are you thinking? I shrugged. Hard to say. You know how poker nights go. Could be 2, could be 4. Depends on how the cards fall. She stared at me for a moment longer, then turned back to the mirror. Fine, whatever. That night, I did go to Dave's, but the poker game wrapped up around midnight. Instead of going home, I decided to grab a drink at a bar across town. Not because I was trying to stay out late to prove a point, but because I realized I actually enjoyed having time to myself without feeling guilty about it. Around 1:30 a.m., my phone started buzzing. Text after text from my wife. Where are you? The girls want to know if you're still playing poker. Are you coming home soon? Hello. I waited until 2 a.m. to respond. Still out having a good time. You. Her response came back immediately. Yes, but I'm thinking about heading home soon. Long day tomorrow. Interesting. Suddenly, she was concerned about having a long day tomorrow. I texted back. No rush. Night's still young. She came home at 2:45 a.m. I got home at 3:30 a.m. When I walked through the door, she was sitting on the couch, arms crossed, looking like a parent waiting for their teenager to come home past curfew. Where were you? She asked. I couldn't help but smile. Out with the guys. Good night. I asked where you were. And I told you. Out with the guys. I kicked off my shoes and headed toward the bedroom. You seem upset. Everything okay? She followed me down the hallway. I'm not upset. I'm just asking where you were until 3:30 in the morning. I stopped and turned to face her. The same place you were until 2:45 in the morning. Out. The next morning, she was quieter than usual over breakfast. She finally spoke up. I talked to the girls about last night. Of course she did. Oh, yeah. What did they say? They think you were trying to make a point. Like you were getting back at me for staying out late. I took a sip of my coffee and looked at her over the rim of my mug. And what do you think? I think maybe you were. I set down my coffee and leaned back in my chair. Let me ask you something. When you stay out until 3 a.m., are you making a point? No, I'm just spending time with my friends. And when I stay out until 3:30 a.m., I'm making a point. She opened her mouth to respond, then closed it. I could see the wheels turning. That's different, she finally said. How? Because you don't usually stay out that late. Neither did you until recently. She was quiet for a long moment. Then she said something that made my blood pressure spike. The girls think you're trying to control me by copying what I do. Like you're trying to show me how it feels. I laughed. Actually laughed. So when you stay out late, you're being independent. When I stay out late, I'm being controlling. Do you hear yourself right now? That's not what I said. That's exactly what you said. Your friends have convinced you that everything I do is some kind of manipulation. When I asked you to come home earlier, I was being controlling. When I don't ask you to come home earlier, I'm being controlling in a different way. There's no winning here. She stood up from the table. You're twisting my words. I'm repeating your words. There's a difference. That evening, she went out again. This time, she made a point of telling me she'd be home by 1 a.m., which was the first time she'd expressed concern about my feelings in weeks. But here's the thing, she didn't come home at 1 a.m. She came home at 3:15 a.m. And when she walked through the door, I was sitting on the couch waiting for her. Before you say anything, she started. We were having important conversations, Anne. I held up my hand. I'm not going to say anything about what time you came home. She looked confused. You're not. Nope. But I'm going to say something about the fact that you told me you'd be home by 1 a.m. and you're walking through the door at 3:15 a.m. We were just talking, Anne. I don't care what you were doing. You gave me your word that you'd be home by 1 a.m. You broke your word. That's the issue. She stared at me and I could see her preparing to launch into her usual defense about controlling behavior. But something in my expression must have stopped her. I lost track of time, she said quietly. You lost track of time for 2 hours and 15 minutes. It wasn't intentional. I stood up and walked toward the bedroom. Neither was my request for you to come home at a reasonable hour, but you made that into a federal case about controlling behavior. Funny how things work out. As I reached the bedroom door, I turned back to her. Oh, and just so we're clear, tomorrow I'm going out with the guys again. I'll be home when I'm home. Don't wait up. That night, as I lay in bed, I could hear her in the living room talking on the phone in hushed tones. No doubt giving her friends a full report on the evening's events. I wondered what spin they'd put on this one. The next week, I implemented what I like to call the mirror strategy. Instead of fighting her behavior, I decided to reflect it back to her perfectly. She wanted independence. I'd show her what real independence looked like. When she announced her Wednesday night girls gathering, I simply said, "Cool. I'm going to hit the gym, then grab dinner with Mike, and probably catch a movie. See you later." No questions about her plans. No requests for a timeline. No expression of concern, just a casual acknowledgement in my own plans. She hesitated at the door. "What movie are you seeing?" "Haven't decided yet. We'll figure it out when we get there." "Oh, okay. When do you think you'll be home?" I looked up from my laptop with genuine amusement. "When the movie's over, I guess." "What? Just curious." "Well, if you're really curious, you could always text me later and ask. Or not. Whatever works for you." She lingered by the door for another few seconds, clearly expecting something more from me. When it didn't come, she left. That night, she texted me at 11:30 p.m. "How was the movie?" I responded at 1:15 a.m. "Good. Still out. You." She read the message immediately but didn't respond. I got home at 2 a.m. to find her already in bed, pretending to be asleep. The next morning, she was unusually chatty at breakfast. "So, what movie did you end up seeing?" "The new action one. Pretty good. And you went to dinner before?" "Yeah, that new place downtown. Good steaks." She was quiet for a moment. "Sounds like you had a nice time." "I did. How was your night?" "Fine. Good. We just talked." "Cool. And that was it?" No interrogation, no passive-aggressive comments, no lectures about consideration. Just normal conversation between two adults who had spent the evening doing their own things. But I could tell something was bothering her. She kept glancing at me like she was waiting for me to say something more. When I didn't, she tried a different approach. "The girls were asking about you last night." "Oh, yeah. What about?" "They wanted to know if you were okay with me being out so late." I took a bite of my eggs and considered this. "What did you tell them?" "I told them you were out, too, so you didn't really have room to complain." Interesting way to put it. What do you mean?" "Well, you could have told them that we're both adults who trust each other to make good decisions. But instead, you framed it like I would normally complain, but couldn't because I was also out. Kind of tells a story about how you see our relationship." She stared at me. "That's not what I meant." "Maybe not, but that's what you said." Over the next few days, I noticed a shift. She started asking me about my plans more often. Not in a controlling way, but in a genuinely curious way. Like she was trying to understand what I was doing when I wasn't focused on what she was doing. "Are you going out again tonight?" she asked on Friday. "Thinking about it. Jake mentioned wanting to check out that new sports bar." "You?" "I don't know. I might just stay in." This was new. For the past month, Friday nights had been sacred girls' night territory. "That's fine. Either way," I said. "I'll probably still go out. Haven't seen Jake in a while." She nodded, but I could see the wheels turning. "Can I ask you something?" "Sure. Are you happy?" The question caught me off guard. "In general, yeah, I'm happy." "What?" "I mean, are you happy with us? With our relationship?" I set down my coffee and looked at her. Really looked at her. "Are you?" "I asked you first." "Fair enough. I'm happy with us when we're acting like partners. I'm less happy when we're acting like adversaries." "When do we act like adversaries?" "When you interpret everything I say as an attempt to control you. When you share our private conversations with your friends so they can analyze my behavior. When you make unilateral decisions about our shared life and then get defensive when I have an opinion about it." She was quiet for a long moment. "I don't mean to do those things. I know you don't. But you do them anyway. So, what do we do about it?" I leaned back in my chair. We start acting like we're on the same team instead of opposing teams. That evening, she didn't go out. Neither did I. We ordered pizza and watched a movie on the couch. And for the first time in weeks, it felt like we were just two people who enjoyed each other's company. But I knew this wasn't over. The real test would come when she went out with her friends again and they started asking questions about why she'd stayed in. Would she stick to her guns, or would she let them convince her that I was manipulating her into staying home? I didn't have to wait long to find out. Sunday afternoon, her phone rang. She answered it with a bright, "Hey," but within minutes her voice had dropped to a whisper and she'd moved to the other room. When she came back, she looked troubled. "Everything okay?" I asked. "Yeah, the girls want to go out tomorrow night. They're saying I've been MIA lately. Have you?" "Well, I stayed in Friday night once, right?" "Once. So, what's the problem?" She sat down next to me on the couch. "They think you're making me feel guilty about going out." I muted the TV and turned to face her. "Am I?" "No, not directly. But, what does that mean?" "It means they think you're being subtly manipulative. Like you're making me choose between them and you." I laughed, but there was no humor in it. "Do you realize what just happened in that phone call?" "What?" "Your friends just tried to control your decision about whether to go out tomorrow night. They told you that you've been MIA, implying that you're neglecting them. They suggested that I'm manipulating you, implying that you can't make your own decisions. And they're pressuring you to go out tomorrow to prove that you're still independent. But somehow, I'm the controlling one." Her eyes widened slightly. I hadn't thought of it that way." "Of course you hadn't, because when your friends do it, it's concern. When your husband does it, it's control." She was quiet for a long moment. Then, she said something that surprised me. "I think I need to have a different conversation with them." "What kind of conversation?" "The kind where I tell them to mind their own business." For the first time in weeks, I smiled at my wife. A real smile. Now that sounds like the woman I married. Monday night came and she didn't go out with the girls. Instead, she called them and had what sounded like a very different kind of conversation. I couldn't hear the details, but the tone was firm, almost businesslike. When she hung up, she looked both relieved and slightly shaken. "How did that go?" I asked. "Better than expected. Worse than I hoped." "Want to talk about it?" She sat down across from me at the kitchen table. "I told them I was staying in tonight because I wanted to, not because you made me feel guilty about going out. And they didn't believe me. They said I was obviously being manipulated and didn't even realize it. They used the word gaslighting about 6 times. I had to suppress a laugh. "Did you tell them that pressuring you to go out after you'd already decided to stay in might also be considered manipulation?" "I did, actually. That's when things got interesting." "How so?" "Well, Sarah got defensive and said they were just looking out for me. Then Lisa jumped in and said that's what friends do. And then Jessica started talking about how men use subtle tactics to isolate women from their support systems." "And what did you say?" "I asked them when they'd started seeing you as the enemy. I pointed out that for 4 years they'd liked you just fine. I asked what had changed." "Good question." "What was their answer?" "They said, marriage changes men. That you were probably just showing your true colors now." I shook my head. "So in their minds, there's no possibility that you might have been inconsiderate or that I might have had a valid point about the late nights. It has to be that I'm secretly a controlling monster who just got comfortable enough to show his true nature. That's pretty much it." "And how does that make you feel?" She was quiet for a moment. "Honestly, it makes me feel like they don't trust my judgment. Like they think I'm too stupid to recognize if I'm being manipulated. That's because they don't trust your judgment. They've appointed themselves as the guardians of your independence, which ironically makes you less independent. I'm starting to see that." Over the next few weeks, the dynamic shifted dramatically. She stopped going out as frequently, not because I'd asked her to, but because she'd started enjoying our time together again. When she did go out, she came home at reasonable hours and didn't act defensive about it. But the real change came when she started setting boundaries with her friends. "They keep asking me to analyze every conversation we have," she told me one evening. "Like they want me to look for hidden meanings in everything you say. And are you?" I was for a while, but it's exhausting. And it was making me paranoid about my own marriage. "What changed?" "I realized that I was happier before I started seeing you as a potential threat. Our relationship was better when I gave you the benefit of the doubt instead of assuming the worst." The turning point came about a month later. She'd gone out with the girls for the first time in 2 weeks. And when she came home at 11:30 p.m., she was visibly upset. "What's wrong?" I asked. They spent the entire night talking about you. About us. About how I've changed since I stopped staying out late. What did they say? They said I'm not the same person anymore. That I've become boring and domesticated. They said you've successfully isolated me from them. And what did you say? I told them that I haven't been isolated from anyone. I told them that I've been choosing to spend time with my husband, and that's a normal thing for married people to do. How did they take that? Not well. Sarah said I was making excuses for you. Lisa said I was in denial. And Jessica said I needed to wake up before it was too late. I sat down next to her on the couch. That must have been frustrating. It was. But you know what was more frustrating? The realization that they've been rooting for our marriage to fail. What do you mean? I mean, they were happier when we were having problems. When I was complaining about you, they were supportive and engaged. But now that we're doing better, they're trying to create problems where none exist. That's a pretty heavy realization. It is. And it makes me wonder what kind of friends they really are. The next day, she made a decision that surprised me. She called each of them individually and had what she described as, come to Jesus, conversations. I told them that I'm not going to discuss my marriage with them anymore, she said. I said that if they can't be happy for me when I'm happy, then they're not the friends I thought they were. How did they respond? Mixed reactions. Sarah got angry and said I was choosing a man over my friendships. Lisa tried to backtrack and said she was just concerned. Jessica hung up on me. I'm sorry. That must have been hard. It was. But you know what? I feel lighter. Like I don't have to carry their opinions around with me anymore. That weekend, she suggested we have a dinner party. I want to invite some couples over. People who actually like both of us. That sounds great. And I want to invite my sister and her husband. I realize I haven't talked to her much about us because I was too busy getting advice from people who don't even know you that well. The dinner party was a success. Real friends, real conversations, real laughter. At one point, her sister pulled me aside. I don't know what was going on with her friend group, she said, but I'm glad she's out of whatever toxic situation that was. You two seem happy together. We are, I said. It just took us a while to remember that we're supposed to be on the same team. Later that night, as we were cleaning up, my wife said something that made me realize we'd turned a corner. I owe you an apology, she said. For what? For letting other people's opinions matter more than my own experience of our relationship. For assuming the worst about your motives instead of just talking to you directly. I appreciate that, but I owe you an apology, too. For what? For not calling out the real problem sooner. I should have addressed the fact that you were sharing our private business with people who clearly didn't have our best interests at heart. She nodded. We both could have handled this better. True. But we figured it out. We did. And I learned something important. What's that? Real friends want your marriage to succeed. They don't spend their time looking for reasons why it might fail. I pulled her close and kissed her forehead. Welcome back to Team Us. Good to be back, she said with a smile. I missed being on your side. 2 months later, the phone rang at 10:30 p.m. on a Friday. I was reading, she was watching TV, and we were both in comfortable silence. She looked at the caller ID, and her expression changed. It's Sarah, she said. You don't have to answer. I know. But I'm curious what she wants after all this time. She answered with a cautious, hello. I could hear Sarah's voice through the phone, excited and animated. My wife's responses were short. Aha. Okay, I see. After a few minutes, she said, Sarah, I'm going to stop you right there. I'm not interested in rehashing old drama or analyzing my marriage. If you want to be friends, we can talk about other things. More talking from Sarah's end. Then my wife said something that made me smile. No, I'm not being controlled. I'm being selective about who I take advice from. There's a difference. She listened for another minute, then said firmly, I'm going to hang up now. If you want to call me sometime to talk about something other than my husband, feel free. Otherwise, I think we're done here. She hung up and looked at me. She wanted to meet for drinks to talk sense into me about our relationship. What did you tell her? I told her that if she can't respect my marriage, she can't be part of my life. How do you feel about that? Relieved. It's been 2 months and I haven't missed the drama at all. The next week, she ran into Lisa at the grocery store. When she came home, she was shaking her head. What happened? I asked. Lisa cornered me by the produce section and started asking all these questions about whether I was happy, whether I felt like I could be myself around you, whether I ever missed our old friendship. And I told her that I'm happier now than I've been in years. That I can absolutely be myself around you. And that I don't miss friendships that were built on negativity about my marriage. Good for you. But here's the thing that really got to me. She said, he's really got you convinced, hasn't he? Like the idea that I might actually be happy in my marriage is so impossible that I must be brainwashed. That says more about her than it does about you. Exactly. And it made me realize something important. What's that? They never asked me what I wanted. They never asked if I was happy with the late nights or if I felt like I was neglecting our relationship. They just assumed that any request from you was automatically unreasonable. You're right. They treated you like you had no agency in your own marriage. And the irony is that by telling me you were controlling, they were actually trying to control me. They wanted me to see you as the enemy so they could position themselves as my saviors. Classic manipulation tactic, I said. I can't believe I fell for it. You didn't fall for anything. You were trying to be a good friend. You just learned that some people don't deserve that level of loyalty. 6 months later, we were stronger than ever. She'd built new friendships with people who respected both of us. She still had girls' nights, but they ended at reasonable hours, and she came home happy instead of defensive. One evening, she brought up the whole situation again. I want to thank you for how you handled that mess, she said. What do you mean? You could have demanded that I stop seeing them. You could have made it an ultimatum. But instead, you just showed me what a healthy relationship looks like by example. I figured you'd figure it out on your own if I gave you space to think. That's exactly what happened. And it made me realize that the person who supposedly was trying to control me was actually the one giving me the most freedom to make my own choices. That's because I trust your judgment. I always have. Even when I was making bad choices. Even then, I knew you'd come around. She smiled and curled up next to me on the couch. I love that you had faith in me even when I didn't have faith in myself. That's what marriage is. Having each other's backs even when the world is telling you not to. Well, I'm officially done listening to the world's opinions about our relationship. Good, because the only opinions that matter are ours. Agreed. And for the record, asking your wife to come home at a reasonable hour isn't controlling, it's caring. Thank you. I've been trying to tell you that for months. I know. I should have listened to you instead of them. We're good now. That's what matters. She looked up at me with a smile. We're better than good. We're a team again. We always were. You just forgot for a while. Well, I remember now, and I'm not forgetting again. A year later, we were at a barbecue when I overheard a conversation that brought everything full circle. A group of women were talking about their husbands, and one of them was complaining about how her husband had asked her to text him when she got home from girls' night. That's so controlling, one woman said. My ex used to do that. Like, we're adults. We don't need to check in like teenagers, another added. I watched my wife's face as she listened to this conversation. She looked uncomfortable, like she was remembering something she'd rather forget. Actually, she said quietly, I think it depends on how you look at it. The women turned to her, clearly expecting support for their position. I mean, if someone cares about you, they worry when you're out late. Asking for a text isn't about control, it's about consideration. But it's the principle of it, the first woman argued. Once you start giving in to those requests, where does it end? My wife looked directly at her. It ends with you having a partner who feels respected and valued, and who returns that respect and value to you. You really think it's that simple? I think we make it complicated when it doesn't need to be. If your husband asks you to text him when you get home, it's probably because he cares about you, not because he wants to control you. The conversation moved on, but later as we were driving home, she brought it up again. I used to be just like those women, she said. I know. I was so focused on defending my independence, that I forgot we were supposed to be interdependent. Marriage is about finding balance. And I almost destroyed ours because I let other people convince me that caring was controlling. But you figured it out. We figured it out together. 6 months after that, we got unexpected validation. Jessica, one of her former friends, called out of the blue. She was going through a divorce and wanted to talk. I've been thinking about what you said, Jessica told her. About how we weren't really supporting you. What made you think about that? My divorce. I realized that all the friends who encouraged me to see every disagreement as a red flag, every request as control, every compromise as weakness, none of them are going through this with me now. I'm sorry you're going through this. The thing is, I think you were right. I think we were so focused on protecting you from imaginary problems that we created real ones. What do you mean? I mean, maybe if I tried to work with my husband instead of against him, we wouldn't be here. My wife was quiet for a moment. It's never too late to learn better communication skills. Maybe not, but it's too late for my marriage. After she hung up, my wife was thoughtful. That could have been us, she said. But it wasn't. Only because you were patient enough to let me figure it out on my own instead of fighting fire with fire. I had faith in us. Even when I didn't. Especially then, she smiled and took my hand. I'm glad you did because I learned something important through all of this. What's that? The difference between people who want to protect your relationship and people who want to destroy it. Real friends encourage you to communicate better, not to give up faster. That's a good lesson. And I learned that the man who's supposedly trying to control me is actually the one who gives me the most freedom to be myself. Because I love who you are and I love who we are together. 2 years later, we were hosting a dinner party for some new friends when the topic of marriage came up. One of the husbands mentioned that he'd asked his wife to call him when she got to her destination during a girls' trip. That's so sweet, one of the wives said. It shows he cares. My wife caught my eye across the table and smiled. It really does, she said. Caring about someone's safety and well-being isn't controlling. It's loving. Exactly, another woman agreed. I'd be worried if my husband didn't care where I was. After everyone left, we were cleaning up the kitchen when she said, "Remember when I thought asking me to come home at a reasonable hour was controlling?" Vaguely, I said with a grin. I was so wrong, and I'm so grateful you didn't give up on me. I never considered giving up on you. I just had to wait for you to remember who we were. Well, I remember now and I'm never forgetting again. She wrapped her arms around me and kissed me softly. Thank you for being patient with me while I figured out the difference between control and care. Thank you for figuring it out. We're a good team, she said. The best team. And as we finished cleaning up our kitchen in our home, surrounded by the life we'd built together, I realized that sometimes the best way to prove you're not controlling is to give someone the space to make their own choices. Even when those choices temporarily take them away from you. Because real love doesn't demand. It trusts. And trust, it turns out, is the foundation of everything else.
If you have made it this far and want to see more videos like this, then kindly subscribe and turn on notifications so you may never miss another story like this.